Welcome to Hawaii, where the lush volcanic mountains rise dramatically from the deep blue Pacific Ocean. Hi, we're Jake and Emily, the two roaming souls. And back in November and December of 2022, we spent a month and a half exploring the 4 major Hawaiian islands. And while it might sound like a dream trip that cost a fortune, the truth is we actually did it on a pretty tight budget. So in this video, I'm sharing our top money-saving tips on flights, accommodation, transportation, and more, so that you can plan your own affordable Hawaiian adventure. So let's dive in. First, let's talk about the best time to visit Hawaii. Luckily, the weather is pretty consistent and beautiful year-round, although you'll find the wetter months are from November to March. You can expect more rain on the windward side of the islands, which is typically on the east side, and drier conditions on the west side of the islands. So that might help you choose where to stay on the island. But rain is also influenced by the local topography of the island, which means the more mountainous terrain, generally the more rainy it can be. So for example, the famous Road to Hana on Maui, it's usually rainier on that side versus the popular places people stay in Kihei or Lahaina. But you really shouldn't let the rain stop you, as you will likely still get plenty of beautiful sunny days. To save on money, you should definitely avoid holidays, as flights and accommodation will be at an all-time high. Non-peak season is generally from mid-April to mid-June and September to mid-December. There, you'll typically find flights and accommodation will dip lower during these seasons. So if you're flexible on time, definitely look into these dates. Next, let's talk about flights. Flights during peak season can climb pretty high in price, but if you keep your eye out for some cheap flights, they are available. Of course, it's definitely easier for people on the West Coast to fly to Hawaii versus the East Coast, and West Coasters are more likely to have a direct flight, therefore typically cheaper. But there are sites that can help you look out for cheap flights, or choose to travel when flights are cheaper. For example, we use the app Daily Drop Pro. They send us emails when cheap flights come in. But I'd really only use this app if you do fly consistently throughout the year, otherwise the high annual price tag will not really make the cheap flight worth it for you. Or another way is to use the Explore page on Google Flights. Just put in your local airport, change the months of your desired travel and the duration, and it will help you pull up the cheapest flights during that time. Plus, you can also track flights if you have your desired dates. Typically flying midweek will result in cheaper flights. And then once you are on the Hawaiian Islands, actually flights between islands can be pretty cheap. Other apps I use are Skyscanner or Hopper, and honestly, sometimes patience is just the best thing here. Alright, on to accommodation. Accommodation is by far the most expensive part of traveling to Hawaii, but there are some tips for finding more affordable places to stay. And I should note, some Hawaiian islands are cheaper than others. Kauai tends to be the most expensive, where Oahu tends to offer some more cheaper options. But you can also still find those high-end luxury resorts here too. But first, let's start with the cheapest way to find accommodation in Hawaii: camping. I know it sounds crazy, but it's obviously the cheapest way to explore Hawaii. Some of the state parks cost as low as $3 per person per night, and it's basically the closest you can get to beachfront, even staying at a luxury resort. But of course, you will need to travel with camping gear, or there are some places that rent gear. Camping in Hawaii does require some advanced planning. You can choose between state parks, county parks, national parks, or private campgrounds, but permits or reservations are required for most of these options. And not all islands have the same rules or application process. For example, on Kauai, you can book their county campgrounds 120 days in advance, but their state park campgrounds only allow reservations up to 90 days in advance, where maybe a private campground can be booked up to 3 years in advance, so it can kind of be a puzzle to book all the campsites you want on each island. But it's important to note that you will be sharing some of these beaches with people who are struggling with the times. So you need to be careful with leaving your stuff unattended. And sometimes people can be loud at night when you're trying to sleep. Oh, and you can't forget about the chickens. Chickens don't just cock-a-doodle-doo at 5 a.m. They go off all night long. And unfortunately, sleeping in your vehicle is not allowed at many of these campgrounds. So renting a camper van is not really a cheap option because you would have to stay at the private campgrounds, which aren't quite as cheap. Unless you have a Boondockers Welcome membership, you can stay on locals' properties for free, but that's a whole other thing. So if you want to learn more about that, we will link to a video we made explaining this membership. I'm not gonna lie, camping has its perks of being cheap, but it certainly comes with its challenges. We do have camping guides on our website that go into much more detail about camping on each island, so definitely check those out if camping is of interest. Another cheap option are hostels. If camping isn't your style, but you still want to save money on accommodation, then hostels can also be a good way to save money. Unfortunately, not all islands have hostels though. You can also try couch surfing. I've personally never tried this, but for a budget trip, it could be worth it. It's basically a platform for fellow travelers to offer up their couch. But the unfortunate part is hosts don't go through a background check, so you will need to trust your gut on this one. Similarly, there are also options for renting a room in a shared vacation rental. For example, on Airbnb, you can filter to the room setting, and you will essentially be renting a room in someone's house. So you might need to share a bathroom, kitchen, etc. But obviously just read the reviews and make your best judgment. But this can truly be a great way to experience these islands. You can meet locals and they can give you tips on where to go, eat, share some hidden gems, etc. And typically, these people do go through a background check, so this option seems to be a little safer than couch surfing, but it will probably cost a little bit more. And of course, there's also the option for budget hotels, but you'll find they aren't quite as budget as like a $30 room at a Motel 6 you might find in the contiguous US. But there are still some cheaper hotel options. We do actually have a couple blog posts highlighting cheap places to stay in Oahu and Kauai, so definitely check those out for more details if you're interested. But do watch out for hidden fees when booking hotels. There's usually around a 15 to 18% tax charged on the rooms, plus resort fees and sometimes parking fees are not included as well. So a room that says it will cost $100 a night can quickly double with all these added fees. A Hawaii trip can also be a great way to use your credit card points. If you're planning this trip well in advance, then consider signing up for a credit card that offers a high sign-up bonus. Lastly, another way to save money is to travel with family or friends to help split up the cost of the accommodation. Now, let's talk about transportation and how to get around the island. Transportation kind of depends on the type of vacation you want. Are you looking to travel all around the island to all the different attractions, or just make it to a resort and sip on some pina coladas? All the major islands have pretty great public transportation around the islands, but of course they drop off at bus stops, and don't just magically take you to the trailhead of the hike you're wanting to do. So if you're trying to make it to your resort somewhere on the island, you can probably get away with riding the bus close to the resort and either walking or getting a short rideshare to your accommodation. But if you're coming to Hawaii to explore all it has to offer, then you'll probably want to rent a car. So if you need to rent a car, we suggest using budget rental car companies or using sites like Turo. One website you can use for all the Hawaiian islands is Discount Hawaii Car Rental. Comparing prices with their company to other car rental companies, they do seem to have a discount, and they are willing to price match. Use our link below if you want to rent a car with them. It helps keep our channel up and running at no additional cost to you. And then there are a few more specific sites for individual islands. For example, on Maui, consider using Kihei rental cars. They rent somewhat older cars at a fraction of the cost. So if you're okay with not having a flashy car, then look no further than Kihei Car Rentals. They pick you up from the airport and will drop you off at their office. We've used them twice now, and it's been a great experience both times. Honestly, I kinda wish all islands had something like this. On Kauai, there's a local company called Ali'i Rental Cars where you can find great deals as well. There's also Turo, which is a platform where you can rent other people's cars on the island. You can find great deals on these type of rentals, especially if you're willing to use someone's older car. But one thing to note is the airports won't allow Turo cars to be dropped off in their airport lots, so you might need to taxi to the car's location or walk there. On Oahu, there's also a company called Hui, where you can basically rent a car by the hour. So if you need a car for just a couple hours to do something, this could be the more affordable option. Otherwise, there's also rideshare apps like Lyft or Uber. Something to note though is vehicle break-ins are very common in Hawaii. So if you're renting a car and or camping, just note you might need to bring your valuables with you everywhere, or get a good travel insurance to cover for theft. Eating on a budget. Eating out can be an expensive endeavor in Hawaii, and usually getting groceries and making your meals yourself is cheaper, but you can expect a higher price for just about everything at the grocery store too. Sometimes getting prepared meals from the deli section of the grocery store can be an easier and cost-effective option. If you're trying to travel to Hawaii on a budget, you might need to make some compromises on eating. Consider bringing some food items with you, such as meal replacements and a shaker bottle, or pack snacks for hiking adventures, etc. You can also go with the classic pack of ramen noodles too, so you don't need to go out for every meal or buy groceries on the island. Or choose some of the cheaper meal options, such as plate lunches from L&L Hawaiian Barbecue or local mom and pop shops. Of course, there's always McDonald's and Burger King, but even fast food chains cost a little more in Hawaii. Generally, food trucks tend to be cheaper than going to a sit-down restaurant, but they are still expensive. And really I think that just comes down to the cost of getting produce and food here is just higher in general, so it reflects in the restaurants and such. But there are some gems out there where you can get quality and tasty food at a reasonable price. And food trucks are typically ran by locals and not a big corporation, so you're helping out a small business. If you're willing to split a meal, maybe choose a larger meal on the menu and split it. Jake and I can usually split a fat burrito or like a big lunch plate and be perfectly full afterwards. Also, hit up happy hours. You can find tons of killer deals at local restaurants. And if you enjoy drinking, consider stopping into a grocery store or liquor store instead of going out for a drink. But I do want to note, it is illegal to drink on most beaches in Hawaii, unless you buy a drink from a resort that's on a beach. Choosing free or low-cost activities. One of the best things about Hawaii is the abundance of beautiful nature to explore, and most of it's free. All beaches on Hawaii are public and free, but you still might need to pay for parking, unfortunately. That being said, some luxury resorts have made it a little more difficult to use some of their beaches, but technically you are allowed. But there's honestly plenty of beautiful beaches. You shouldn't have to crash a luxury resort to enjoy some beach time. Hiking is probably our favorite free activity. There are tons of amazing hikes on each island, some being very easy as just a nice walk in the park, to some being extremely terrifying, yet all beyond beautiful. Also, snorkeling is a great free activity you can do just off the shores on many of the islands. We suggest bringing your own snorkel so you don't have to book an expensive tour or overpay for rentals. Once you know where you're staying, do a quick Google search to find some easy, free places to snorkel around the island. And check for free hula shows around the island. It can be a fun way to immerse yourself in the local culture. Ultimately though, I do think there are tours and activities that are worth spending your money on. So this is an area where I think you might want to reserve some money to do some of the cool things around the island. For example, if you're visiting Kauai, seeing the Nepali coast is an absolute must. But it's not that easy to get to, so you need to either visit via boat, helicopter, or multi-day backpacking trip. Maybe saving money in one area can make you feel like you can spend it in something else. I think you gotta strike a nice balance between free activities and spending your money where it counts. My last little tip is to pack smart. Try to save money by bringing the essentials that you already own at home. For example, bring sunscreen, bug spray, a reusable water bottle, snorkel gear, etc. Like we mentioned earlier, pack some of your own food, like snacks for day trips to avoid high grocery store prices. Bring ramen for a quick, easy lunch or dinner, or bring a meal replacement with a shaker bottle like Kachava. And lastly, avoid going to shopping centers so you aren't really tempted to buy souvenirs. Hawaii is such a beautiful place to visit, and we don't want money to be something that stops you from visiting these beautiful islands. So we hope you found some helpful tips and advice, and you are ready to plan an epic budget trip to Hawaii. We will leave tons of helpful links that we talked about in the description below. Thanks for coming along on another Two Roaming Souls adventure. Please leave any questions or additional tips you might have in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.